Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Thursdays wherever you may be across this great country or indeed around the world, as I started off my day watching the ceremony of D-Day, the 80th anniversary from Normandy. And I've told this story a few times before, but I do think on this day, of all days, it's worth discussing. One of the coolest days I've ever had the experience of, just a full day of incredible historical sort of immersion. I got to tour all of the beaches of Normandy. It's probably been 6-7 years ago now. I was over in London and then in Paris with my family. My wife, to her credit, set this up. We took the train from Paris to Normandy. We were picked up by an English-speaking guide, and he had a van for us, and he spent the entire day driving me, my 3 boys, my wife, our assistant Katie, all over the beaches of Normandy, taking us to all the most significant locations. Now, my boys were very young. As I said, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago. I'm getting older, so everything's kind of running together. But I think this would have been in the neighborhood of 2017-ish. Trump was president, I know, so it was in that like 2016 to 2018 window, somewhere along those lines. We were actually in France for Bastille Day, and Trump was actually visiting. I remember because they shut down the roads around there, and Macron was still the president then. But it was an unbelievable experience. And if you ever get the opportunity to travel there and stare out over those locations, the land is almost identical today as it was 80 years ago. Most of that area is still farmland right off of the beaches where all of our troops landed. One thing that staggered me and I found so incredible was the number of American flags that still fly in many of those French villages as a thank you for liberating them from the Nazis. But if you have the opportunity to stand there and look out over the land that those troops had to seize, Pointe de Hoc in particular, that craggy, mountain-like rise to the beach, what they had to climb in order to get to that bunker, what those men did is truly unprecedented in its magnitude of bravery. And it's been 80 years. I was talking about this on Clay and Buck earlier, but if you think about it from a historical perspective, what those men did on June 6, 1944 was closer to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln than it is today. That's the kind of thing that'll just blow your mind if you're a history person. Let me repeat that. 80th anniversary of the beaches of Normandy being stormed. The men who stormed those beaches, it was 79 years after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in Ford's Theater when they stormed the beaches of Normandy. It's kind of wild, isn't it? To think not only about the midpoint effectively being June 6, 1944, between Lincoln's assassination and as I speak to you today, but also just how soon after the Civil War we're talking about these guys all over the world coming together to fight back against Hitler and the Nazis. And I always like to tell this story. I like to give recommendations, books that I've read. I don't claim to have read everything. But I did read Stephen Ambrose's Band of Brothers many years ago. And there's all sorts of incredible details in there. A lot of you have watched the Band of Brothers series on HBO, which is fabulously well done. But in that Stephen Ambrose book, one thing that stood out to me that I just couldn't stop thinking about was the 101st Airborne Troops. Most of them became paratroopers for a little bit of extra money in their paycheck. Most of them had never been on an airplane before. And for the vast majority of them, the first time they ever went on an airplane was when they jumped out with parachutes. However old you are, can you imagine the first time you ever went on an airplane jumping out of it? It's just a different level of heroism, courage, and bravery than we experience generally today. And so the idea that you would be going up in an airplane for the first time, as the 101st members of the Airborne did, written about in Band of Brothers with Stephen Ambrose, most of them jumped out of the plane the very first time they ever went up in the air. I mean, I can't get over it. I was told this the other day by my dad, and I couldn't believe it. I never really had thought much about it. I'm Clay Travis. I'm named after my grandfather, who was born in 1905. He never, ever went in an airplane in his entire life. I probably shouldn't be surprised about that. He didn't travel very much. He was born in Muhlenberg County, Kentucky. Most people around him were coal miners. He came down to Nashville to work in the DuPont factory. That's how my family ended up in Nashville, Tennessee. And the Nashville, Tennessee area was, he came down here to work in a factory. Both of my grandfathers, who I was named after, worked for most of their lives in factories, one in combustion engineering in Chattanooga, the other one in DuPont in the Nashville area, Old Hickory, Tennessee, to be specific for you guys. Never got in an airplane in his entire life, didn't really ever take vacations, worked all the time. But I couldn't believe when I read that in Band of Brothers, and I would encourage you guys, Stephen Ambrose's book, if you're history interested at all, it's an easy read. Maybe you've got kids or grandkids. You can certainly watch the television series, and that's great. It's well done, and I don't begrudge it. But it's not an incredibly difficult read. I think you would really enjoy it, kids, grandkids. It's a great way to pay tribute to the men who stormed the beaches of Normandy 80 years ago today and what they did. So I wanted to start off the show talking about that, and also to think about it in the context of everything historically, the fact that you're closer to the Appomattox surrender when the beaches of Normandy are stormed, to the assassination of Lincoln, than you are today. It's just really kind of wild for me. All right, much less serious things that are going on. I'll dive through them. We got VP list down to 8, according to multiple media reports. I'll run through that. The Georgia case with Fani Willis on hold. Probably not going to happen, as I told you. The NBA Finals start tonight. Danny Hurley potentially going to the Lakers, and I've got some numbers from you on Caitlin Clark that illustrate basically all of the WNBA viewership is directly connected to her. But I want to tell you, PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. NBA Finals, more on PrizePicks, so do the star players, boosted payouts, select basketball stars. You don't get it anywhere else. When the finals are over, doesn't stop. You can bet on Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese every Wednesday and Saturday in June. You can also try out esports. Lineup doesn't win. You get the entry fee back. Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, all that and more. You can get hooked up and make sure that you don't miss out. PrizePicks up to $100. All you have to do is go to prizepicks.com, use my name, Clay or OutKick, and you will get hooked up with $100, not have to worry about it at all. And I have 4 winners for you tonight. One of them is just a giveaway. Jason Tatum, more than a half point. You can't lose this one. Jason Tatum is going to score over a half point. Boom, we're starting off with one of our 4 winners. Then I'm going Kyrie Irving, more than 24 points. Luka Doncic, more than 31.5 points. A little bit nervous about that one. And then PJ Washington, more than 12 points. Again, Tatum more, Kyrie more, Luka more, PJ Washington more. That turns into a 10-1 payout, and you will be well on your way to being able to make yourself a bundle. So make sure that you go do that today. Those 4 picks, again, Tatum more, Kyrie Irving more, Luka more, PJ Washington more. You even get injury insurance. Your lineups will stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. And if you have a player who exits the game in the first half, doesn't return, then you're going to get hooked up as well. Pick more, pick less, PrizePicks. Do it today. Download the app, use code OutKick, you get $100. I just gave you a winner. You're going to want to do it. First deposit match up to $100. Again, go sign up today. PrizePicks.com, code OutKick. Several different things out there. What do we think is going to happen in the NBA Finals? I think the Celtics are going to win in 6. My prediction, Celtics win in 6. Couple of stories that are out there about the NBA. Front page story in the Wall Street Journal today about the dollars that the NBA is going to get potentially from Amazon, ESPN, and NBC, maybe Turner. We'll see exactly how they manage to slice and dice the NBA's overall package. But they're going to get quite a lot of money beyond a shadow of doubt. I think this is a sign that actually things are messy. And what I mean by things are messy is ratings have collapsed. And if ratings have collapsed, there's absolutely no way at all to justify the dollars that are being spent here. Doesn't make any sense at all. It's a complete and total failure of the marketplace, but I think it's indicative of the fact that there's actually no major issue out there with making money on sports right now because the ratings don't matter. And that's a sign that you're maybe in a pretty significant bubble if the ratings don't matter at all as all of this is playing out. So several other different stories out there. I wanted to hit this because I do think it's significant. Caitlin Clark, a lot of debate about, hey, how much of an impact is she having? What is the overall what is she bringing to bear in a significant fashion when it comes to how many people out there are actually watching these games? And this was given to me by a ratings expert, so I want to make sure that I read this correctly. But there's been an argument, maybe Caitlin Clark isn't really driving WNBA viewership. Actually, almost all of it is her. Through Sunday, Caitlin Clark games, 1.099 million viewers on average. Non-Caitlin Clark games, 414,000 on average. Last year's average, 300,000. So Caitlin Clark by herself is nearly tripling the rest of the WNBA audience, and much of the growth in other WNBA games is actually just Caitlin Clark being able to have more people watching the double headers. So basically, this is not a league growth. This is just Caitlin Clark virtually driving all of this herself. Another report that is out there on the NBA, this directly impacts college basketball as well. Woj earlier today reporting that Danny Hurley is now being targeted to potentially be the next head coach of the Lakers. The Lakers obviously have a big decision to make. It had been expected that J.J. Redick, based on a close relationship with LeBron James, might end up being the overall next head coach of the Lakers. Instead, it now appears maybe Danny Hurley's going to be the guy. Back-to-back national titles at UConn. This would be a sign to a certain extent that the college process is burning a lot of coaches out, where you have perpetual free agency, where you're always recruiting, putting together new NIL packages. I don't think it would be coincidental if Danny Hurley decided, you know what, the NBA may be easier. You don't have to worry about all of the management. You don't have to be as much of a roster GM. And he's won back-to-back titles already. Maybe that's the play in his mind. This would also be a sign, potentially, that the Lakers are not as committed, maybe, to LeBron James as you would expect. Maybe they aren't even going to draft Bronny James. LeBron is 40 years old. Does it make sense to build the roster and the head coach around a 40-year-old aging superstar who, frankly, has a lot of demands? Or is this a sign that the Lakers might be turning the page and thinking about the next era of the NBA. Just intriguing to be contemplating. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to shake out. But again, the reports are Danny Hurley potentially to the Lakers. A couple of other stories that are out there in the world of politics. Story that went everywhere. These are reportedly the final 8 contenders to be the selection as vice president to run alongside of Donald Trump. J.D. Vance, senator from Ohio, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, Ben Carson, the former Housing and Urban Affairs Secretary, also neurosurgeon, genius, Representative Elise Stefanik from New York. She's the one who got into it with Harvard, MIT, and Penn's presidents. Byron Donalds, congressman from Florida, and Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. That is reportedly the final 8 on Trump's list. There are reports that he's requested financial and other documents from those 8. Couple of things that stand out. One, only Trump knows who the pick's going to be. And I don't even think Trump knows who his pick is going to be right now. And I would suggest to you that's what's somewhat intriguing is only one woman, Elise Stefanik. You've got Marco Rubio, who's from Florida and would need to relocate to another state in order to be able to run alongside of Trump, who is based in Florida. You've got one governor, Doug Burgum, who ran for president as well. A bunch of senators here, 4 senators, but also 3 different black men, Ben Carson, Tim Scott, and Byron Donalds. What I would submit to you, assuming that this is an accurate list, and it may well not be accurate, there's been certainly other names that could be on this list. There may be names on here that you would not anticipate making the final cut. Maybe they are. Not a ton of surprises here right now. But what I would say to you based on this 8 is, and I've been saying this for a long time, the pick at vice president is going to be, in my opinion, reflective of whom Trump thinks is going to aid him in expanding the coalition of support that he believes he will get to be elected president of the United States. So if he goes Marco Rubio, I think that will be a sign of, hey, we feel like there's a real opportunity among Hispanic voters. If he goes Byron Donalds or Ben Carson or Tim Scott, that would be a sign that he believes the overall opportunity, in particular for black male voters, is real. Goes Elise Stefanik, maybe she has a little bit more of an appeal to suburban women. And then if he goes with a Tom Cotton or a J.D. Scott, this is the way that I would, J.D. Vance, the way that I would analyze it is basically what he's saying is, hey, I'm not even concerned about who the VP is. Standing out again to me on this VP list, there is no one out there that is in any way adding a state. There's no, for instance, Glenn Youngkin of Virginia. Nobody from any of the Midwest states that he thinks is going to have an impact. No Greg Abbott on a one particular issue, let's say, the governor of Texas, as it pertains to border security. So all of those are somewhat interesting. Again, the VP list down to 8. Fani Willis's case in Atlanta, Georgia, now on hold as there is a Court of Appeals decision that will have to be made on whether or not she is going to be allowed to remain as the DA in this case. I told you a while ago, this case is done. Georgia case is finished. I think it is likely to be impacted and implicated by the decision that the Supreme Court is going to make on presidential immunity. We don't know exactly when that decision will come down, but we're into June. By next week, we'll be into the middle part of June. I've said for some time, I think the only case that's going to go to trial is the Alvin Bragg case. It now has gone to trial. There may be an attempt to rush through some of the Jack Smith case. I don't think it's going to be successful. which is why I think on July the 11th, which is basically 2 weeks, 5 weeks from today, I think. 5 weeks from today, I think that Judge Merchan is going to sentence Donald Trump to prison. I do. Because if he fines him or he puts him on probation, there's no way that the overall left-wing advocates are going to be satisfied by that. They want Trump in prison, anything less, and they are going to be angered beyond belief. So I don't think the judge there, Merchan, is going to be able to sit around and say, oh, you got to pay me a $100,000 fine and you're on probation for the next 6 months. I just don't think that's going to be the ultimate sentencing that he hands down on July 11th. I think he's going to try to put Trump in prison. Finally, circling back again, PrizePicks, use the code OutKick. My picks, Jason Tatum, more on points. Kyrie Irving, more on points. Luka, more on points. And PJ Washington, more on points. PrizePicks, code OutKick. We are getting one free guaranteed win there with Jason Tatum, meaning we only need to hit on 3 more. Kyrie more than 24 points. Luka more than 31.5. And PJ Washington more than 12. Jason Tatum is a giveaway. If we hit on that, it pays out at 10-1. Appreciate all of you. As always, DBAP unless you need to SBAP. My immense thanks to everyone involved in the 80th anniversary of storming the beaches of Normandy. I should also mention one of the cool things I've gotten to do, I believe it was maybe like January of 2020. Again, the years all run together. When LSU played Clemson, it was right before COVID, I believe. I was down in New Orleans for the national title game, went to watch that LSU-Clemson national title game when Joe Burrow and LSU just kind of were unstoppable in that game. I went and played against Trevor Lawrence. I went and I visited the National World War II Museum, which is in New Orleans. At that time, they had a lot of World War II veterans who would come and sit in the lobby and answer questions and interact with people who came in there. Some of the people who ran that museum were big OutKick fans. They took me on a tour, took me behind the scenes, let me see so much of the incredible collection that they have down there. I understand a lot of times it's very difficult, expensive to be able to go to Normandy. If you're a history buff like me, I hope that all of you get the opportunity to do that one day. I would say it's an incredibly gratifying, ennobling experience. But if you cannot make that trip, New Orleans, far more accessible trip to many people, not particularly difficult for a lot of people to get to. The World War II Museum in New Orleans, fabulous way to spend a day, incredible opportunity to get to go tour it. I would say if you get that chance, you will be profoundly grateful for the opportunity to visit that museum as well. I had the chance to go there. The people who run it are fabulous. I imagine they still have some World War II veterans coming in the morning in the lobby there and spending days. Trust me, take the chance to spend the time to understand your nation's history and just how brave, courageous, and outstanding so many people in the past have been. My name is Clay Travis. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. Also encourage you, go buy Stephen Ambrose's book, Band of Brothers. It's an easy read. You'll be glad that you did it. Thanks for hanging with me. I'll be back with you tomorrow. Enjoy. Hope you take a time for your kids or grandkids to mention the 80th anniversary if they're not aware of it. Many thanks for everyone for making America the greatest country in the history of the world. To all the veterans out there, I appreciate you. Thank you for giving us the freedoms that we have every single day. See you guys tomorrow.